All right. Welcome back, everyone. Just so I can know we're all there, let's see some applause. You know, we like the virtual applause and the virtual hellos and highs. So to this point, what I'd like to do is introduce our next speakers. And they join us from TSA. Now, you may be familiar with these next two gentlemen. First, we have Chris McKay. He is the Mass Transit Industry Engagement Manager in the Office of Industry Engagement Branch, Policy, Plans, and Engagement. And he's been a frequent speaker at many of FTA's events. And joining Chris McKay today is TSA's new Deputy Assistant Administrator of Service Operations, Ron Pavlik, who recently retired from WMATA after serving 26 years with the agency. Before joining TSA, Ron served as the Chief of Police with WMATA's Metro Transit Police Department. So with that, let's give our guests a warm virtual welcome. And Chris and Ron, please take it away.
Thank you very much for that introduction. First, I'd like to say good afternoon to everybody on the East Coast, and good morning to those on the West Coast. I'd like to thank the Federal Transit Administration for inviting us here today to provide an update on some of the activities that are currently ongoing at TSA headquarters, both on the policy side as well as the operations side of the house. The Federal Transit Administration has been a very good partner to TSA for the last 20 years. We appreciate that partnership, and we look forward to continuing that strong partnership into the future. So with that said, next slide, first slide, please. So what I'd like to do today is I'd like to talk about three items really that have been ongoing for really all of calendar 2021. And that includes some efforts that were ongoing with the Mass Security Directive, efforts that continue to be ongoing for our security training programs, and then finally provide an update on the Surface Transportation Security Advisory Committee. And then we would be happy at the end to take any questions on any of these items, or really any item that you want to bring up in regards to TSA and some of our efforts at headquarters, both on the policy and the operational side of the house. Next slide. So it seems like a long time ago, but you know, in January of 2021, as most of you know, the president signed an executive order to promote COVID-19 safety in domestic and international travel. So therefore, following that executive order, the CDC, as the lead federal agency, issued guidance on January 29th, which basically, as you all know, requiring travelers and the general public to wear masks when utilizing public modes of transportation, whether you're in an airport, a bus, a rail station, as well commuter trains, buses, vessels, and other forms of public transportation. So shortly after that, that order in January 2021, basically on February 2nd, TSA had to implement the CDC guidance and the CDC order. So how did we do that? We had to do that through a security directive. So shortly after that, TSA published security directives that would impact both aviation mode of transportation as well as the public transit mode of transportation. And this was basically, the security directives were basically enforcing or enacting the actual CDC guidance and recommendation, and would require all passengers, operators to wear a face mask on all modes of public transportation, including air, bus, rail, etc. So really, the security directive was put in place as a result of the president's executive order in January of 2021. And then following the executive order, the CDC's guidance to move forward with that executive order. Next slide. So basically, before I start on the first bullet point there, the security directives do run through January of 2022. They were recently extended. So right now they currently run through January of 2022. Not sure where they will go after that. That will be pending, certain other decisions and recommendations from the CDC. So just a couple questions in regards to the mask order. How is TSA enforcing a mask requirement on buses, trains, and in stations? So, we're the lead federal agency to enforce the security directive. We work in very close partnership with our public transit owners and operators. And, it's not TSA's job to try to enforce the security directive on passengers at bus stations, train stations, and rail stations, and the like. So we work closely with our public transit partners. They work to enforce these mask mandate requirements in light of the security directive. Public transit agencies are required, in the event they do encounter a passenger who is unwilling to put on a mask and then takes it to the next level, they are required to report that incident to our Transportation Security Operations Center. And from there, our inspector force will then investigate as appropriate, depending on the nature of the incident. Will there be civil penalties for non-compliance? The answer is yes, that could happen. If there was a passenger who refused to wear a mask and then became belligerent, or that turned into an assault, that type of thing, there is a possibility then it could go down a civil penalty avenue. So that's kind of where we're at with the mask directives. 99.9% of most passengers do comply. Yes, people are wearing their masks. However, as you know, both in aviation and in public transit, you have a few out there that just will refuse to wear a mask. So we continue to work through those issues. And as I said before, this mandate will continue through January, I think it's 18th of 2022. And then we will decide from there what the next steps will be. Next slide, please. Security training programs. Well, I feel like we've been talking about security training programs now for a number of years. So as most of you know, security training programs, TSA promulgated a rule basically called the Security Training for Surface Transportation Final Rule, March 23rd of 2020, published in the Federal Register. So this would require certain public transit agencies to develop a security training program and then train their security sensitive employees on various security awareness aspects, such as observe, assess, report, and respond. So in light of COVID, TSA extended the deadline for these security training programs to be submitted to TSA for approval to June 21st, 2021. So right now, we have received pretty much all the plans. We're going through in a review and approval process of these security training plans. And specific to public transit, there was approximately 48 agencies that were impacted by the security training rule. So basically, from there, once your plan is received and the plan is approved, the agency has 1 year from the approval date to train their security sensitive employees. And then from there on provides refresher security training every 3 years. So that in a nutshell is kind of where we're at with the security training programs, security training rule. It's really been a learning process for all parties involved. We were able to conduct, in partnership with APTA and the Federal Transit Administration, several webinars in advance of the final due date in June of 2021 to provide as much technical assistance as we could to get folks up to speed and get their plans to TSA and get them approved. Next slide, please. Just a little bit more information on the security training rule. If you are interested in reading about this, you can go on the internet, TSA website. We have a fairly robust description of the rule, what it requires, who is impacted, and those types of things. Also have some videos on the internet folks can use to help assist with the security training rule. And then also, if you are a member of the HISN, Homeland Security Information Network, there is a number of resources as well on the HISN website that provides additional information on the security training rule. Next slide. And then finally, I just wanted to briefly talk about the Surface Transportation Security Advisory Committee. This committee meets quarterly. It advises the TSA administrator on surface transportation security matters, including the development, refinement, and implementation of policies, programs, initiatives, and security directives pertaining to surface transportation security. This committee was developed as a result of the TSA Modernization Act of 2018, which was signed into law in October of 2018. Just a couple things about this committee. We have representatives from both government and industry partners. It's not just specific to rail or public transit. It spans all modes of transportation for surface. So that would include public transit, freight rail, over-the-road bus, pipelines, and then it also includes several of our government partners, FTA, Federal Railroad Administration, FEMA, and others as well. Again, it meets quarterly, and it consists of 4 subcommittees: insider threat, cybersecurity information sharing, security risk and intelligence, and finally, emergency management and resiliency. I serve as the co-chair for the government side of the Emergency Management and Resiliency Subcommittee, along with the co-chair on the industry side, Jennifer Gibson, who is with the chemical sector, pipeline sector. So we spearhead many of the efforts that go on in that specific subcommittee. Next slide. Like I said, the Emergency Management and Resiliency Subcommittee, I just wanted to highlight one of the efforts we did was really as COVID was spinning up, we conducted a workshop in September of 2020. This workshop consisted of representatives from TSA, the Surface Transportation Security Advisory Committee, and a number of other industry partners, both across public transit and other surface modes of transportation. Really, the purpose of this workshop was to convene a group of these folks, industry partners, experts, to share, discuss, and validate COVID-19 best practices and lessons learned related to transportation operators' pandemic planning, logistics, information sharing, and response. I will share with you the results of that workshop, and I'll coordinate that with the FTA, and they can provide a summary of the after action report for that workshop. For those best practices, they may be worthwhile for you and your agency. And currently we have a second workshop, a follow-on workshop planned for December of 2021, January of 2022. Really now, as we get to this post-vaccination climate and how things have changed, and where we want to go from here in terms of assisting public transit agencies with pandemic planning. Next slide. This is my contact information if you need to reach me. Certainly there's my phone number and my email address. Those are three of the highlights I just wanted to mention for today's webinar. Certainly, if you have anything else on your mind, we're here and willing to try to answer any of those questions you may have. So with that said, now I'd like to turn it over to Ron Pavlik, who is the Deputy Assistant Administrator for Surface Operations, and that falls within the security operations component of TSA. Thank you. Ron?
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Dr. Ramsey, for that welcome. As Chris mentioned, I am the Deputy Assistant Administrator here at Surface Operations, and we'll get started with my first slide. So I want to kind of go back in time there. Back in October 2018, Chris mentioned this, Congress passed the FAA Reauthorization Act of 2018. And within that act, there was also the TSA Modernization Act. And this is kind of what outlines. I want to highlight some of the things that that Modernization Act highlights. One was creating the Assistant Administrator position for surface operations. And then within that, there's several bullets there that I want to highlight. One being the conduct security system assessments. TSA does this through a variety of different means. A couple of examples of those are security enhancement through assessments, also known as CETAs. They do corporate security reviews, critical facility security reviews, and VADARs, which are validated architect design reviews. So there are a number of reviews, tools, resources available that TSA uses to ensure that our stakeholders in the surface operations side are safeguarded and protected each and every day. We also participate in the grant programs, the Transit Security Grant Program, review those grants and see how they align with the objectives of the administrator and the country overall. You talk a lot about, or I'll talk more about regulatory compliance, but TSA gets a lot of things done through structured oversight. And that's where we engage our industry partners, whether at a local level, state level, or federal level, to help develop the best practice and standards that can be used across all service modes. And then a lot of is accomplished through training and exercises and assessments that we do. And I'll go into greater detail with that. One that comes to mind, and hopefully everybody's heard of it, is the First Observer Plus program, which is really designed for frontline employees to help recognize the warning signs of terrorism, suspicious activity, and the like. And a lot of this we do through just, through engagement. Can't stress that enough. Our mission is very basic, really. We really want to protect the safeguard the surface transportation modes. And we do that at a local level, regional level, and obviously at a national level. And we do that through a risk-based approach and by a number of other means I'm going to highlight here shortly. Next slide, please. So here's the organization chart from across the country. So part of that TSA Modernization Act is how we realigned the country. So starting in the Region 1, you can see by that kind of purplish color there, that's Marissa Malola. She's based out of New York City. So these 5 regional security directors report down through me, and then when I report up to Ms. Sonia Proctor, who serves as Assistant Administrator for Surface Operations. Region 2 is the yellow area there. That's Miss Mary Lethbridge Bird. She's based out of Atlanta. And then I guess orange kind of color there, pinkish color, salmon color is Jim Spriggs, and he's based out of Chicago. And there, Region 4 is Melvin Caraway. He's based out of Dallas. And last but not least is Region 5, which is pretty much the entire West Coast and Alaska. That's James Duncan, and he's based out of Seattle. He recently just joined this side of the house, coming from a TSAR position. So basically, these 5 regional security directors and I share information on a regular basis, and they're responsible for surface operations modes within their respective region. So the TSIs, the transportation security inspectors and whatnot, report up through them in a number of different initiatives. Next slide. So TSA does have statutory authority. The TSA administrator has a unique power or authority to establish security regulations or regulations without going through a public process. And Chris kind of highlighted some of that in his presentation. And this comes through the Aviation and Transportation Security Act. And the first one was the mask mandate, which was back in January of 2021. And security directives are not new to surface operations, but they're not commonly used like they are in the aviation world. So to go back a little bit in time, the last real security directive that was issued was back in 2004, shortly after the Madrid train bombings. So since then, we've issued the mask security mandate, or security directive rather. Then we issued the pipeline security directive in May of this year. And then we issued a second to the pipeline industry in July of this year. And both of those are underway. And as Secretary Mayorkas mentioned earlier this month, I'm sure everybody saw it in the media, we are in the process of issuing another directive, security directive, that's going to be focused on the high-risk railroads and the transit areas which within those high-risk areas. So these will be part of the training rule, which tied to the training rule are impacted by it. And these are helped just to strengthen our cyber posture across the United States. It's not common practice to issue these security directives, but it's another tool that TSA uses to help ensure compliance. Again, a lot of our accomplishments are done through structured oversight and working in partnership with all of our stakeholders across the industry. Non-regulatory compliance is very successful as well through the structured oversight that we do here at TSA. Next slide. I want to hit some of the key priorities that we're focused on. Chris talked about this, the mask compliance. These responsibility lies with the transportation or transit surface inspectors, the TSIs, and ensuring the compliance mandate. TSA doesn't do that. This was reported up to the surface inspectors. And here are some of our numbers here to date. So since September 30th, we've had over about 500 incidents. And these incidents are reported up to the TSOC. And it has to reach a certain threshold to make it a reportable offense. And it has to be a significant security related incident. And here you can see some of our numbers. 97 resulted in compliance investigations, 70 warning notice, and 11 cases that were referred to civil penalty. Chris highlighted the training rule. Here we want to just highlight 47 mass trained and pastoral systems are applicable to it. This program is going very well. One key point here, the TSIs will go out and inspect for compliance with the training rule with the different entities. But a key component here is, as a new employee comes on as part of the regulation, if they perform a security sensitive role, they have 60 days to go ahead and take the training as well. So that's something that the transportation security inspectors will validate and verify and inspect as we go through compliance. And this will be, again, as part of the pipeline initiative 1 and 2 security directives. And then with the future security directive that's going to impact the rail side, those will be the type of inspections that the TSIs will do in the future. Next slide. I want to highlight some other tools that we do here, some of the things, the initiatives that we have, the base assessments. This is a critical component. It's all voluntary. There's about 17 components that make up a base assessment where an owner operator agrees to have TSA come in and do this assessment. They did add a new cyber component to it that's going to go into greater detail here in fiscal year 22 as we move on to that. It's important to note the gold standard award. This is something that is not just given out or easily obtained. Basically, in order to get the gold standard award, you have to score 90% or higher in every category in order to be the gold standard award. So here you can see since 2009, TSA has given out 87 gold standard awards. If an owner operator has a gold standard award, it's something it's not easily achievable, and it's highly regarded because it is so hard to achieve. And you can't get a lower score than 70 in every one category. So you have to have over a 90 average overall. So it's going very well there as well. And again, it's all voluntary compliance to that structured oversight. But I'll highlight there in FY21, we did 96 of these reviews, and we're starting to see where other smaller transit agencies or smaller agencies are signing up for these assessments, which is a very positive thing and things that we're looking forward to here at TSA and it shows that the program is getting momentum, and it is very regarded in the industry. As we move into FY22, I mentioned there, we're going to look at how we can add 5 additional things in part of the NIST cybersecurity framework, how that will add to the base assessments going forward. As we prepare our FY22 base assessments calendar, which we're doing now, we're in the process of lining up where those next base assessments will occur in FY22. Next slide. Here's another couple examples of things we do here at TSA through the EXIS program. This is a great online process that you can evaluate how your agency performs in certain security postures, whether it's through tabletop exercises, full-scale exercises, and we're really focusing on a couple of things here: prevention, protection, mitigation, response, and recovery. Using TSA assets and contractors that we use, this is how it gets done, and we'll facilitate workshops. Another great program that is a resource here. The iStep program, this again is another security initiative, security planning tool really, that helps our partners build and sustain security preparedness within their organization. And this helps globally. It helps, obviously the travelers, the day-to-day users that use that system, but also enhances our posture as a nation, develop best practices, identify capability gaps or trends that may be occurring throughout the systems. Another great tool there. The 5 and 5 workshops, those are a great cyber tool, especially here lately with the cyber issues that we're seeing in SD 1 and 2 that are impacting pipeline, and here SD 3. Again, this is strictly cyber focused, where owners and operators focus on that critical infrastructure. This is applicable to mass transit, passenger rail, the trucking, the overroad buses, school bus, freight rail, and pipelines. And then kind of that one I did highlight earlier, the First Observer Plus training program. TSA, this is probably one of their crown jewels as far as training programs go. Looking at the numbers, over 20,000 surface employees have been trained. And this is really focused and drilled on the first line employees or first level employees, where they can help identify suspicious behavior, activities, and how to report them. This training is highly regarded, and again, it can be classroom-based, online-based, and it builds over time. So really another great opportunity there for owners and operators to engage with TSA and our partners. Chris kind of touched on it as well, and I just want to highlight that a lot of the work and efforts that we do really cannot be done if it wasn't for the partnerships that we have with our stakeholders, and then more important at a local, state, and federal level. So I believe that's my last slide, and then my next slide is just my contact information. I know I went through that kind of quickly there, Dr. Ramsey, but want to leave time for questions and answers.
All right, thank you, Ron. Okay, so we like to ask any attendees, do you have any questions for our speakers? There was a lot of great information. They could help expand on some of the points that they made. I heard some really cool information about some of the training resources you have available, but of course I'm biased. Let's see, so we'll give it a few moments. And we'll see if there are some additional questions. And while we're waiting, since we're talking about training, that's a hot topic. Have you heard of any any additional requests for virtual training over at TSA?
I am not aware of any. Due to this COVID world, we're trying to get back to some sense of normalcy. The online training, kind of like these webinars, it's a little more challenging to be engaging with that. But I have not been made aware of any. Chris, I don't know if you've heard of any, but I have not seen an increase in that request, no.
No, but I would add, after the mask mandate security directive was put in place, we did partner with the Federal Transit Administration, and they were able to promote their de-escalation, some of their de-escalation training, and how to deal with, assaults, bus operator assaults, and that type of thing, and de-escalation. So we did see an uptick, I think, in some of that training as a result of the mask mandates.
Yeah, and I know NTI through Rutgers did a number of online classes and increased their class size as well, so they can encourage more people to participate in that type of training that Chris is talking about there.
Yeah, there was a large number of participants, from what I understand, that completed those courses. So that's really good news. Let's see. Doesn't appear to be any additional questions. We'll wait just a second longer, which by 1 second, I mean probably about 25 seconds now. But we'll just give it some time to let the questions cook. All right, well, to that point, gentlemen, thank you so much for providing information today. Really good points. And do you have any additional information you want to share before you depart today?
Yeah, I think like Chris, we echo the partnership and the relationships that we have with our federal partners at FTA. If anybody has any questions, I'm sure our contact information will be available to them, but Chris and I and people here at TSA are always willing to help out. So any questions or comments, maybe people didn't want to ask in the chat or comes up later, please don't hesitate to send them our way.
All right, that works for me. So thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Now for attendees, we're gonna position some more questions for you. So just like we did a moment ago, or about an hour or so ago, we went through a few questions. We would really like your feedback on the last session that was delivered by Chris and Ron. So if we can get those questions pulled up. All right, so question number one. Did this session improve your understanding of the topic? And these are the same questions as before. We have yes a lot, yes a little, and no. Give you a moment to choose your response. All right, can we broadcast question number two, please? Overall, did this session meet your expectations? So yes, it met my expectations, or it met some of my expectations, or no, the session did not meet my expectations. And I'll give you a moment to choose your response. All right, let's go ahead and broadcast question number three, please. It looks like question number one came back up. Just a moment, please. You know, it's around 2 o'clock. Computers need coffee too, just like we do. So let's let the technology wake up. All right, so can we please have question number three broadcast? Okay, do you feel that the objectives of the session were met? Yes, no, some were met, and unsure. All right, and finally, question number four. How are you feeling overall? Excited to continue, informed, neutral, or overwhelmed? All right, so it looks like we've gone through those quick questions, and we are very happy to know that you are informed and excited to continue. And with that, please remember that if you have any questions throughout any of the remaining sessions for today and tomorrow, please place those questions in the Q&A tab, which is to the right of the chat option on the platform or on your screen. So with that, we're going to take a break. And with this break, I'd like you to clear your minds and walk around and think about, why is it important for us to talk about cybersecurity in 2021? And the speakers may or may not answer that direct question, but it'll at least get you ready to engage in the conversation. So to that, let's get our coffee, let's stretch, and we will see you back at 3 p.m.